Hello, people. Doing things a little different this week. I got my notes, but also I'm going to use sort of notes out of ye old Kindle. Let's see if this works. This week, I decided to go with Moby Dick or The Whale. This is one of my favorite books of all time. Now, I remember growing up and seeing it, every 5 minutes in the libraries when I was a kid. I'm glad I didn't read it then. I don't think I would have got it. I don't think it's a kid book, even though it was in every kid library. I'm not exactly sure why it's in there. There's a lot of meat on this bone. Now, this is, what is that? This is, obviously, it's one of those in the public domain books. So this bad boy is free. You can buy, obviously, you can buy it. You can get different versions of it, all this and that. Leather bound, I'm sure. I have mine on Kindle. It's where I first read it. It's one of the first books I got when I got the Kindle, because it's, you get a new toy, you get all the free stuff with it. You can give me free books, I'm going to take them. So I read it on Kindle. I don't own an actual copy. I mean, I don't think there's not a real compelling reason for me to own it. It's fine where it is. I have access to it. I have a bunch of books, but it's not for a big collection or anything. Mostly I have to just collect Lord of the Rings. In any case, it's free. You can't argue with the price. My rating... Now, I love it. This is a top 5 book of all time for me. I think I could say that. Top 5 at least. But I'm only giving it a 3 out of 5. It isn't non-reader friendly, let's say. If you are a reader, if you're about it, you can deal with it. But for casuals, for kids, for this type of thing, it doesn't flow. It's big, meaty words. It's a lot to have to think about. Which is all the things that makes it a great book, but it's not sort of your modern entertainment. It's not going to be quick like this, like The Expanse. It's not going to be quick like that. The story elements are sparse. 3 out of 5. If you haven't read it, and you're big into reading books, pencil in a time sometime in the year to sit down and actually read this book. And I'll give you some tips along the way. The opening line, I think, is great. Call me Ishmael. This is it. That's the first sentence. Call me Ishmael. It seems innocuous. But he's the only one who says his name in this book. He's telling the story. There's dialogue, but they never say, hey, Ishmael, come pick this up. Hey, Ishmael, do this. And you're like, well, what's the big deal? Ishmael is it's more of an exotic type of a name. Now, I'm sure if you're from Arab area, maybe it's less exotic. Maybe it's not. I can't speak too much to that. But the look of it in English, it's not John. His name's not John or Ted. It's Ishmael, right? So as a reader, you start with this. Even if you're from an Arab country and you're used to these types of names, you don't normally start a book with such a short sentence, right? So even the visual of that will work in what it wants to do. Because what it's doing is it's setting a stage. A lot of the beginning of the book is setting the stage. Not in, here's what's going to happen. But in the weight that you're going to give what's happening. He uses very, very rich language, right? So when you come with rich language, expectation rises. If you see a nice car, you expect it to have a nice engine, right? So, like if you're the author, if you raise the expectations, then you can't meet them, you failed, the book fails. But if you want to chew on larger, heavier, complex issues, but don't raise sort of the sea level of your book, then when you start munching on them, it'll feel out of place. It's not serving your ideas well. I want to have a serious, let's say, just as an example, I want to have a serious religious conversation. You can't really go to Twitter for that. It's not the it won't elevate people's thinking to be in the wavelength of a serious subject, right? You do some other way. So he's setting the stage. It doesn't seem like much, but it's very early on. He's just talking about, he'll grab a subject and he'll go on sort of long soliloquies about the subjects. So he's talking about everyone wants to be drawn to water. That's him. That's he's feeling a kind of a way. And so he's like, I gotta go to sea. That's his idea. There's sort of there's a romantic element to that. To just sort of drop your things and then go on this voyage, right? Sort of why sci-fi works as well. You can imagine yourself not being home in the middle of East Texas, like some of us are, with squirrels looking at you eating their acorns in a boring wood you've seen before. And instead, just one drive away and you get teleported up to the Enterprise and now you're dealing with Klingons or something, right? This idea that the ship is the carrier for you to go on these adventures. It's sort of the same energy, but, you know, with boats, the ocean. Who knows what you're going to find? The pine tree shakes down its sighs like leaves upon this shepherd's head. You know, shepherd is you think biblical. Pine tree sighs, but then you pair it with leaves. Pine trees don't have leaves. You know what I mean? Is the pine tree sad that it doesn't have leaves? You know, this kind of, your brain just starts to open and grab. And then he feeds that opening. He hides some of it with humor, right? There's a part where he meets Queequeg. It's an odd name. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. That's how I say it in my head. Queequeg. He's hunting for some place to sleep. The place he finds is full. He actually skips places that are too nice. I mean, he's going out of his way to find the wilderness feel he wants almost, right? So he goes out of his way and he finds sort of a real salt of the earth place. Well, this place is full. This place is full and cold. And the guy's like, you got a double bunk. So you gotta sleep with this dude you do not know. And of course he has this weird conniption about it. He goes, what does he say? No man prefers to sleep two in a bed. In fact, you would a good deal rather not sleep with your own brother. I don't know how it is, but people like to be private when they're sleeping. And when it comes to sleeping with an unknown stranger in a strange inn, in a strange town, and that stranger a harpooner, then your objections indefinitely multiply. That give across sort of a personality. These moments, human moments, right? I don't want to sleep in the same bed with a strange person in a strange town. There's an oddity there. And it's almost a break in points where sort of the high-mindedness here, and then we sort of break and have this sort of like, isn't that kind of crazy? You know, this kind of almost breaking the third wall. He doesn't, but it pokes in a little. Otherwise, there's no relief for the reader. Everything's too heavy. He's looking at a painting at one point. He looks at a painting, just as an example. He's looking at a painting and he's saying it's this kind of a thing that you would look at that just sort of absorbs your mind. And that if you don't have any kind of fixing for the curiosity, it just overwhelms you. It's an old painting of something, but it hits him in a kind of a way in the room that he's in. It's the Black Sea in a midnight gale. It's the unnatural combat of 4 primal elements. It's a blasted heath. It's a Hyperborean winter scene. It's the breaking up of the icebound stream of time. Right? Now again, he starts like this and he doesn't sort of really let up. He lets the pacing lag a little in non-eventful things, right? If he's going to eat some chowder, he takes a long time talking about chowder. Or setting up a boat. You know, there's moments where but he doesn't break from this sort of language too often. So that you just sort of get used to it coming at you in these great waves. This would seem out of place. But in my mind, I'm going, this is leading to a bigger thing. So it's what is it? It's you're preparing yourself to carry that extra weight. Now, if he failed, obviously, that would be a useless little line I gave you. But he doesn't fail. He does go to heavier subjects. And it's just wonderful. It's what you want to eat if you're a reader. It's just how you subsist. His face was deeply brown and burnt, making his white teeth dazzling by contrast, while in the deep shadows of his eyes floated some reminiscences that did not seem to give him much joy. You see? He's describing a dude who later becomes his friend. There's an intensity that's just constantly ebbed into you. He has a dream. Now, for whatever reason, I think of the bigger moments in the book. So when you reread it, you grab other stuff, and he has a part in here where he has a dream. He sleeps in the same bed with Queequeg, and he wakes up and Queequeg's arms around him, and he feels a kind of a snugness. He calls it the best sleep he's ever had. I think there's a Friends episode that does the same thing. But he's trying to describe the feeling to you, and in describing it, he talks about something that happened when he was a kid. He got in some kind of a trouble, and it says his stepmom makes him go to bed early. And he's like, I can't. He's a kid, and it's killing him. So he gets up, and he's trying to beg her, let me out of this punishment. She's like, nope, you got to go back to bed. So he goes to bed, and then there, in this sort of kid suffering, a supernatural hand seemed placed in mine. My arm hung over the counterpane, and the nameless, unimaginable, silent form or phantom to which the hand belonged seemed closely seated by my bedside. For what seemed like ages piled on ages, I lay there frozen with the most awful fears, not daring to drag my hand away. Right? It's this terror that you think, like a kid, if I don't move, I'm okay. This weird. But it was weird that it just out of the blue, and he's like, if you strip away the terror, there's the feeling that came with that hand holding my hand. Making all the world dark. Is kind of what it felt like with Queequeg. And it reads like a pleasant feeling. But it also reads sort of like a terrorizing memory. But then I was like, it said stepmom. So I'm wondering, because by the end of this book, your boy Ishmael lives. Everyone else dies, right? Now, you don't know this when you read it. You carry this supernatural memory with you in the way back of your head, because I don't remember it as keenly as the other moments. But then I wonder, is this like his mom holding his hand and helping him through the torture of being in bed for 16 hours through daylight, right? I wonder about it because of the way he then describes it with this warm feeling with Queequeg. And it's just subtly tossed in there. It just floats right into your brain and you carry it. And it builds these supernatural verbiages, elements. You're above this plane of the normal existence. Something in that sphere is happening here. Right? Even though it's just, because if you boil it down, it's a whaling ship. And they're trying to kill a whale. But I think something about being at sea, away from all the land, away from all the people, lends itself to this more than, right? He goes to, they're all eating. And he takes his harpoon, which is just like a long spear, a razor sharp thing attached to a spear, right? It's just kind of like a spear. He has it at the dinner table and he's reaching it out, picking up steaks. Why? Well, like you're whizzing it by people's heads and he could, stab anybody. But he said, but that was certainly very coolly done by him. And everyone knows that in most people's estimation, to do anything coolly is to do it genteelly. And like it hit me like, that works in modern time too. If you just cool about whatever you do, it's hard to describe. But you can just get away with stuff other people can't. And I think you've seen it. Some cats are just cool with it. And so they just get away with stuff. I thought that was just funny. Again, funny moments that break up. He spends the early chunk of the book in town. And in amongst town, he goes to a church. And this is where we start grabbing some of the bigger issues. And again, the language. Oh, ye whose dead lie buried beneath the grass, who standing among flowers can say, here lies my beloved. Ye know not the desolation that broods in bosoms like these. What bitter blanks in those black bordered marbles which cover no ashes. What despair in these immovable inscriptions. Right? There's a room full of people. And there's a bunch of marble plaques, and they're the lost sailors of the families of the lost sailors, right? And he's saying, what it's like to not be able to bury them, that the sea just takes them, that you just look out your door because you live on the coast, and you see that sea, and know somewhere in that endless expanse is your person, that they don't have the relief. Right? How do you bring that up in other books? And then bringing it up in this one, knowing this guy's about to go out, you'd start to build that foreboding. Like, we're talking a lot about death. Why are we talking, and he even says it, I thought it wasn't a good omen to be looking at these tombstones of sailors when I'm about to go sailing. Because he now is talking about, again, he'll take a paragraph and just give almost an opinion. But it comes from this Ishmael character. So it's, both what the author wants to say and sort of descriptive of this character. How is it that we still refuse to be comforted for those who we nevertheless maintain are dwelling in unspeakable bliss? Why all the living so strive to hush all the dead? Wherefore, but the rumor of a knocking in a tomb will terrify a whole city. All these things are not without their meanings. But faith, like a jackal, feeds among the tombs, and even from those dead doubts she gathers her most vital hope. Right? It's now again, he wrote it back in the day. But it's not like religion has lessened throughout the centuries from then to now. It's not like we don't have questions about the afterlife, right? But to challenge, in a way, verbally, just you're saying out loud, why are we all afraid of death if everyone's supposed to go to heaven, right? It's a good question. He doesn't give an answer. He makes this commentary on faith, But then he also, what is it? If a tomb is knocking, the whole town is terrified. I mean, why wouldn't we be happy if someone we thought was dead is now alive? But you don't take anyone in a coffin as alive anymore. You take it, what is it, zombies and ghouls and all these horror stories start to come alive with just some noise. It's this contradiction people have, right? To say you believe one way and then to act this other way. And then you, again, without that elevated language before, he can't tackle these issues. I guess he could in a different way, but it wouldn't work. He goes to a church and the guy starts a course, a sermon about Jonah, because we're talking about a whaling ship. Now, if you don't know, this is a story in the Bible about a man who doesn't want to listen to God. God says, go this way, and he's like, I don't want to go that way, so he tries to hide. And, of course, he tries to take a boat there. The seas get turbulent. They toss him overboard, and he gets eaten by a whale. That's how God saves him, by eating him by a whale. That's the story. Now, this book has religious elements, biblical elements. And I will bring them up, and you can have any kind of argument you want about it. But I'm not bringing it up in any kind of religious sense, just so we're square. It's more of a literary sense. Because you can't read literature, any kind of books, without Bible stuff coming into play. It affected the authors. The authors wrote the books. So in that sense is what we're talking about. So don't freak out. So our author says, in this world, shipmates, sins that pay its way can travel freely without a passport, whereas virtue, if a pauper, is stopped at all frontiers. Isn't that true? He has these little moments where you just sort of stop and think about it, and you're like, he's right. What is it? If you have enough money, you get off in court, right? That's what people think. Whereas if you're good all the time but can't afford the lawyer, you just lose the case, right? And now behold Jonah taken up as an anchor and dropped into the sea. And I love it's almost every other page where he hits you with some kind of great verbiage to just chew on. It's part of the fun of the book, more than things that happen in it. It's just absorbing all this great writing. We go from that right to Queequeg, who, being a cannibal, has his own weird little pagan gods. And the guy does a thing where he sort of sits with him in that little pagan ceremony. He's conflicted a little about it. You know, how can I as a Christian do this pagan thing? But then he goes, well, the Christian thing to a guy who shared his time in the church of God would be to share, sharing is sharing. He kind of thinks through how to be in this situation. So he spends a little time with the pagan. But it's odd that it contrasts one right after the other. One with more foreboding. But then also, we now sort of like introduce in our minds the gods watching over this event. However you may think of them. And then what that means for our story. Because like I said, everyone ends up dead except our guy. So then you can question, was it this fairness that helped him live? That he didn't look down on pagan gods as much as any other gods? Was it that he went to church that he lived? Is it his honesty? Is it just a fluke? You start to wonder. We get a lot of time discussing Queequeg. He's the son of a king who made a vow to go on whaling ships. He wants to learn about anything he can learn to come back and help his people. Rip Queequeg. He basically, you know, they didn't want to take him. This is old history. That crew didn't want to take him, but he takes a canoe, goes to where he knows they're going to be, and then just sort of jumps on the boat. And so they keep him. But he's a good cat. People will try to insult him or look down on him because he's a cannibal. Like you do. Like they'll try that, and then later they'll be in trouble. He'll dive in and save them in some freezing water. The crews always end up liking him. Hardworking, fair, stays out of your way. Might save your life a time or two. What's not to like? But we did have a moment where his god, his totem, whatever the thing is called, Yojo they call it. Him and Queequeg, Ishmael and Queequeg become friends. And so then now they have to pick a whaling boat to go out on. You're putting your life in the hands of this captain. Let's look around. Queequeg says he talked to his Yojo. And Yojo says Ishmael needs to pick. That we're going to take whatever boat. And Ishmael's like, I don't like it. I'm not sure about it. But he insists, so then they pick. So you're like, if Queequeg had picked, would he have picked a different boat and lived? One wonders. And then it's a commentary on, you know, putting your faith in that pagan god, isn't it? Because he got Queequeg killed. But then was Yojo's point to get Queequeg killed, but save Ishmael? Is that God working his mojo right? I don't know. He finds, oh, what's this ship called? The Pequod? The Quad. Odd. I love the weird, odd names. She was appalled like any barbaric Ethiopian emperor, his neck heavy with pendants of polished ivory. She was a thing of trophies, a cannibal of a craft, tricking herself forth in the chaste bones of her enemy. I'm like, oh, I just love this writing. Because then just instantly my mind is filled with, and it does go on to describe, some of the running boards are the jaws of other whaling ships. Some of the pegs to tie ropes down are the bones, these ivory bones of these, I said jellyfish, of these whales. Jellyfish ain't got about bones. Of these whales, right? And so there's these pieces all over of whale that just make this barbaric looking ship. So, you know, one, you know it's good at its job. It's killed a bunch of whales. But two, it's outlandish, right? And it's exotic. We start building the exotic. And then from here, we take a long time, a good long time, to start building up our old Ahab. Because you're like, you've now given me this great ship. This just great visual of a ship. Now, how do you pair that? What kind of captain would ride this? Now, we have two old captains of it, who are the owners. They're kind of crazy, but they're like senile crazy. Harmless crazy. He's the one who, and it starts with your, it's not a direct, right? It's the indirect buildup of a character, right? So, what is it like in Jaws? You don't see the shark, you just hear this noise, or you see it eat somebody, you know, you see someone get sucked under the water and then blood comes up. Or, you know, he rips the dock off. The unseen builds in your mind a little more. One of these old captains says, I don't know exactly what's the matter with him, but he keeps close inside the house, a sort of sick, and yet he don't look so. In fact, he ain't sick, but no, he isn't well either. Anyhow, young man, he won't always see me, so I don't suppose he will see thee. The these and the thous also remind me of Bible stuff. Old King James Version. And sometimes they talk like that, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes, you know, I'm talking death. I'm talking the afterlife. I'm talking religion. And so those subject matters need this cushion of this great language. And, you know, that old school English just feels great, right? It feels like it fits perfectly. And it's hard to use. you can't, it's hard to use in modern senses, right? I'm trying to think of a sci-fi that does it. You can't really use these verbiages. You have to think of a different way. But you're hitting different subject matter, right? So that makes sense. But Captain Ahab, and we get 2 or 3 people who just allude to this man, allude to him in a kind of a way. But nothing about that thing that happened to him off Cape Horn long ago, when he lay like a dead for 3 days and nights. Nothing about that deadly skirmish with the Spaniard before the altar of Santa. Heard nothing about that, eh? Nothing about the silver calabash he spat into, and nothing about his losing his leg last voyage, according to the prophecy. There's one chapter that's actually called the prophet. And this guy just goes on like that. I think he's either he might be crazy. I think they say he has scars from smallpox, but smallpox apparently didn't kill him. He's called Elijah, which is also, I believe, a biblical prophet. And he just gives this ominousness to the captain. And he constantly says, right, like he wants to, you get the sense he wants to warn them not to go on that ship. But that he constantly says papers that have already been signed, right? You've already signed your name. You've already signed. So it's like they're trapped. But there's nothing they can do. But Ishmael wants to know more, but he won't give them any. We don't even see the captain till they're a good ways out on the water. And here's the little side note I will give. This is way, way, way back in the day, right? So if I hear a hawk, this is way, way back in the day. So we didn't have, like you and I grew up with, you can watch the Discovery Channel and literally see whales. You can old National Geographic pictures, encyclopedias, right? There's a general knowledge that comes with an audience. Way back in the day, they didn't have this. So he uses part of the book as like a National Geographic. Descriptions of how to stock a boat. Again, still story-based, so it fits with the story. But they are long, drawn-out moments. Some of it, it's still wonderful writing. So if you're inclined, you can read it. I think I read 1 or 2 of the whale descriptions before I'm like, I know what whales look like. So I skipped those chapters. And you clearly, if you're a reader, you'll know right where to skip. But they're long descriptions of the types of whales, what they look like, what hunting them is like, the procedures, the boat. You know, it needs to carry everything. It needs to have backups of this and that. We're in an uncharted world here, and there's no store to buy more. On and on we go, right? So half of that is this just descriptor for an audience back in the day that had no concept of it. And for them, I'm assuming it'd be fun. If you know nothing about it, you've never seen any Discovery Channel of old whaling ships or whales or the ocean or anything like that, it could hit you the way it hit them, I suppose. But it'd be easier just to hit it to YouTube. You know, look at some whales and you'll get it. But like I said, some of it's still well written. Some of it, all of it's still well written. So you could read them also just for the descriptions. But it is a lot. I mean, it's a good chunk. So you can also skip it. That's the tip I would give. Skippity-doo-dah. They set sail at Christmas. Which again, you can't think of Christmas without old Jesus Christ. More religious, there's these tones throughout. These silently hits that just reverberate in your head. Wonderfulest things are ever the unmentionable. Deep memories yield no epitaphs. This 6-inch chapter is the stoneless grave of Bulkington. Right? Now, he does this 2 or 3 times where he gives me this foreshadowing of death. Now, when you don't know what's going to happen, when you don't know everyone dies, it's foreshadowing and then death. They just like plop them on the table. And again, your story now has to equal these subject matters. It elevates it. So, that's not sick. It's just me choking on my spit. He does, though, right? He elevates and then manages to exist in that elevated state. Take you along with him. We finally get to Ahab himself. He shows up on deck, right? Now, he spends his time almost dreading to see him, but almost, excited. He says, reality outran apprehension. Captain Ahab stood upon his quarterdeck. There seemed no sign of common bodily illness about him, nor of the recovery from any. He looked like a man cut away from the stake, when the fire has overrunningly wasted all the limbs without consuming them, or taking away one particle from their compact, aged robustness. I'm like, that's just weird. It's just this, again, he starts to be this otherworldly kind of a character. And it's a great character. They say something about finding a mark from his hair down, right? He has sort of tan skin, so it's like a white line. And they don't know, he doesn't say if it's a scar or a birthmark. Some say that it might be a birthmark. But then there's this, in my head, I feel like there's a lot of myth built up around birthmarks. Like, I think they said Caesar had a birthmark. I don't remember if Alexander the Great had one, where I know Genghis Khan, they said, had one. Where they think it's some omen from above of some kind of greatness, or in some people, a bad omen, and bad things are going to happen, and blood's going to flow. This kind of thing. Omens come from these birthmarks. I don't remember exactly what I'm thinking, but I think that essence is what carries. I mean, he's just such an intense character. He will hardly ever smile. They say at best you see the almost buildup of a smile in this character. Old age is always wakeful, as if the longer linked with life, the less man has to do with aught that looks like death. Ahab quote. He's like, he doesn't want to sleep. I like that quote, though, where you're thinking, it's like, why am I in this makeshift tomb, in this makeshift grave, when I'm going to die at some point? Right? It starts to eat at him. At some point, somebody has an issue with his peg leg. What happens when Ahab shows up is all those higher elements that we've been on start to coalesce into this one character. So, it's just him walking with a peg leg. I think at some point it says it was life and death in each stride. And I'm like, the living leg and then the dead one, life and death. And you see step, peg, step, peg. You can just hear it in your head. But it's a moment that happened on the boat. It's a moment that's more than the actions. And so in order to sell or get across that moment, he had to elevate the rest of the book in this way. That's why we talked death. That's why we talked Bible. That's why he gave me this great verbiage after great verbiage. So that when he comes to this character, he can sell me, and I'll buy this otherworldly element that comes with him. That's the genius of everything he'd been doing. Such would have been the reverberating crack and din of that bony step, that their dreams would have been of the crunching teeth of sharks. Right? They just hear it. Because everyone's sleeping below deck, and they just hear this leg, just hitting on the deck. And it throws them. At some point, one of them asks, can we put some kind of wad on it to make a different noise? And he ain't having it. Because of course he's not, because he's Ahab. In Old Norse times, the thrones of sea-loving Danish kings were fabricated, saith tradition, of the tusks of the narwhal. How could one look at Ahab then, seated on that tripod of bones, without bethinking him of the royalty it symbolized? For a Khan of the plank, and a king of the sea, and a great lord of Leviathans was Ahab. Just, just him sitting there just becomes this thing. He's smoking, right? At one point he's smoking. How now he soliloquied at last, withdrawing the tube. Soliloquied? I mean, what I mean? It's just glorious language, just all over the place. The smoking no longer soothes. And to me, that's when even your vice, right? Like smoking, smokers. Can you imagine if you're a smoker? This is the same with, I suppose if sometimes, what do they say? Food lost its taste, right? There's this thing we can enjoy that when your mental isn't right, when there's an issue overriding everything else in your life, your food loses taste. When a smoker can't calm down with tobacco, the level he's at is super high, right? When your super espresso doesn't do it for you anymore, how deep in it are you? He tossed the still lighted pipe into the sea. The fire hissed in the waves. The same instant the ship shot by, the bubble the sinking pipe made. With sloshed hat, Ahab lurchingly paced the planks. It's what is it? The old ways are, he's losing the old ways. Again, it's just so striking in my mind, the visual. Fire, we gave man fire. The gods gave man fire, and here it just gets, it's out. It's gone. The sea just swallowed it up. At some point, he makes his intentions known. He says, if he has a big thing of gold, and he says, if you find this white whale and bring him dead to me, I'm going to give you this gold. Straight up. And he describes it, and the other guys have heard about it, and they say, that's Moby Dick. That white whale you're describing is Moby Dick. And then he makes them, he's all like gung-ho, right? He's been this element in the ship, and now this element's asking something of them, and a lot of them are willing instantly. Starbuck, one of them, isn't. Aye, Starbuck, aye, my hearties all around. It was Moby Dick that dismasted me. Moby Dick that brought me to this dead stump I stand on. Aye, aye, I'll chase him round Good Hope, and round the Horn, and round the Norway Maelstrom, and round Perdition's flame before I give him up. And this is what ye have shipped for men, to chase that white whale on both sides of land, and over all sides of earth, till he spouts black blood and rolls fin out. Right? He's laying it out for him. And they get caught up in it. And Starbuck doesn't. Starbuck is like, this is stupid. What does he say? Vengeance on a dumb brute, cried Starbuck. That simply smote thee from blindest instinct, madness to be enraged by a dumb thing. And Ahab sort of takes him aside and convinces him, just convinces him of his way of view. He tasks me, he heaps me. I see in him outrageous strength with an inscrutable malice, sinewing it. That inscrutable thing is chiefly what I hate. And to be the white whale agent, and to be the white whale principal, I will wreak that hate upon him. He says, and this is what I think ends up convincing him. The pagan leopards, the unreeking and unworshipping things that live and seek and give no reason for the torrid life they fill. The crew, man, the crew. Are they not one and all with Ahab in this matter of the whale? See Stubb, he laughs. See yonder Chilean, he snorts to think of it. He feels insidious, but he's trying to convince him that it's good for morale, right? It's good for the crew, and that it'll get you some money in the end. He has them drink out of the bottoms of their harpoons like a cup. This oath. He swears this oath that we're all going to hunt this thing. But his joy at the enchanted, tacit acquiescence of the mate, Ahab did not hear his foreboding invocations, nor yet the low laugh from the hold, nor yet the presaging vibrations of the winds in the cordage, nor yet the hollow flap of the sails against the map, as for a moment their hearts sank in. For again, Starbuck's downcast eyes lighted up with the stubbornness of life. Ah, this is not Starbuck saying this now. Ah, ye abdominations and warnings, why stay ye not when ye come, but rather are ye predictions and warnings than shadows. You can almost feel like the universe telling him not to do this. But he's saying it's just this little moment, this moment of trepidation in the rattling of the sails, right? You could feel the whole moment out on sea, and that they're all gonna just not listen. They're just gonna disregard anything and everything, and you know, they all get swayed by his madness. And then that's what we get to next. We have a moment where it almost turns into like a play. And it's Starbuck sitting here and this guy standing there, and their internal turmoil just laid out on the page. Some people are singing. It almost turned into like a play section for a minute. I don't know why we went to like a play mode though. I think maybe that's why you get this sense that, what does Shakespeare say? All the world's a play, and we're just actors upon it. This kind of thing. You get this sense that now they're no longer themselves. They're these like Jonah. You're these pawns in the God's game that's going to be played here. And we, the reader, know that the play ends in at least some deaths. See, then we get some on the whale. Nor was it his unwonted magnitude, nor his remarkable hue, nor yet his deformed lower jaw, that so much invested the whale with natural terror, as that unexampled, intelligent malignity which, according to specific accounts, he had over and over again envised in his assaults. That's the horror of this whale, is he's smart. He plays dead. He'll draw you in. Turn around and wreck the ship. And not just wreck it, but then eat people, tear limbs off, this kind of thing. Again, we now need a monster equal to our Ahab. And we get some on Ahab. Blindly seeking with a 6-inch blade to reach the fathom-deep life of the whale. That was Captain Ahab. Just starting to describe the moment he sort of encountered it. And then it was that suddenly sweeping its sickle-shaped lower jaw beneath him, Moby Dick had reaped away Ahab's leg as a mower a blade of grass in the field. And then this is the part where we stitch it all together. The white whale swam before him as the monomaniac incarnation of all those malicious agencies which some deep men feel eating in them, till they are left living on with half a heart and half a lung. It's that inner wrong. It's some inner thing in a human being, right? You're like, why is a serial killer a serial killer? What drives these great people to do these things? It's always, what is it? Genius and madness are like right on a razor's edge. All this internal element of man is what we're dealing with, and they're just manifest in these characters. Ahab did not fall down and worship it like them, but deliriously transferred its idea to the abhorrent white whale. He pitted himself, all mutilated, against it. All that most maddens and torments, all that stirs up the lees of things, all truth with malice in it, all that cracks the sinews and cakes the brain, all the subtle demonism of life and thought, all evil to crazy Ahab were visibly personified and made practically assailable in Moby Dick. Right? It's just this, it's not even him. Him as mankind, right? It says piled upon the whale's white hump, the sum of all the general rage and hate felt by his whole race from Adam down. And then, as if his chest had been a mortar, he burst his hot hard shell upon it. He just becomes the embodiment of all this, all the bad in man, in people, in humans. And then he seals it and he says it's the white whale. And now there's a thing for man to, attack. Evil is this unnamed thing, right? I think it's kind of why we like monster stories. If it only were that, if only I could slay the dragon and the world be at peace, wouldn't that be great? But you can't, right? That dragon, that evil thing is inside people. It's what makes people do bad. It's constantly you have to fight against the evil. I love this part. For long months of days and weeks, Ahab and anguish lay stretched together in one hammock, rounding in midwinter that dreary, howling Patagonian cape. Then it was that his torn body and gashed soul bled into one another, and so infused them and made him mad. Just it all comes together in one moment. And then this is again, we got a taste of it earlier with him convincing the mate. You get this sense, right? You got the sense of it with him sort of in his way tricking the mate, right? But then it says here, human madness is oftentimes a cunning and most feline thing. When you think it fled, it may have but become transfigured into some still subtler form. This is what Ahab does. He's crazy, but then he knows he's crazy. That's the worst part about the evil madness, is that it's focused here. And so he's pretending to be a captain, pretending to be sane, pretending all these things to get this crew where he needs them, and then infusing them with his madness, and then driving that whole thing towards this white whale, all to get a piece of them, right? It's just, and it's like, it's such a complicated concept that I don't see how you could get there without this sort of great verbiage. I think my notes stopped there. Let me see. I think they in essence stopped there. Yeah. Of course, the rest is the action of the book. He hunts them. They find the white whale. The white whale kills everyone, and Ahab kills the whale, and everything goes down to the depths. And your Ishmael lives, obviously, because he's what's telling us the story. And every time I reread it, it's just like I'm in the moment. And every time I reread it, I love just this glorious language. There's only bits. I only gave you bits. But it's all throughout. The heaviest of concepts. And he can deliver on. All right. I think I did a good job. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe I just rambled. Maybe I was too rambly this time. Anyways. Ad time. Are any of my books as good as Moby Dick? I can't say that they are. Mind you, you also get Moby Dick for free, so it's not a fair comparison, because my books aren't free. My books cost monies. Okay. I think I got across what I liked about this book. You just live in this sort of ethereal zone with it, right? I've read it like 3 or 4 times now. I'm going to read it more. Give it a read if you haven't. Give it a reread if you want. All right. I'll see you people next week.